Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Your dial is set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being with us today. Broadcast 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. If you'd like to call us, we'll pay for the call. 866-582-9933. 866-582-9933. And the telephone listen line, 605-477-3249. Dr. Millie Hinkle's with us. CamelMilkUSA.com. CamelMilkUSA.com. She's a ND, naturopath. She has a practice in medicine. Welcome, Dr. Millie Hinkle.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's delightful broadcasting with you, Dr. Hinkle. And the audio sounds crystal clear today. And I'm sorry we had the problem last week. But
I'm so sorry, too. So I wanted to go over some of the stuff that we weren't able to last week.
Yeah, please do.
Well, last week I was talking about some specific types of diet that are very important. Now, when you hear the word diet, you go, oh. But if you could be on a diet for 3 to 5 months and totally change your life if you were a diabetic, totally reverse your diabetes, would you be willing to do it? I would. Most people will tell you that there's really little to no cure for type 1 diabetes, but we've seen with the camel milk even, there was a study done in India where they took patients and did a study with camel milk on them that were type 1. And it took about 2 years, but they were able to reverse that diabetes in most of the patients, not all of them. And I'm sure they were on some type of a diet, but probably not a very restricted diet. And I know that one of the first patients that came to me was a little girl in Arizona, and both of her parents were pharmacists, and she had developed type 1 diabetes, but within 10 days she was from 4 shots down to 1, just on the camel milk alone. And within about 10 months, she was totally off of all medication and no injections for the type 1 diabetes. So that was very impressive. The thing that, concerns me, though, speaking of that type 1, especially in children and even adults, we see an epidemic proportion of patients in my office that are children that are type 1 diabetics, and they became type 1 within 24 to 48 hours after having some type of vaccine. So that is concerning. We see some adults that have come into my office, the same thing has happened. They've gotten a flu shot, or they've gotten a vaccine, or they've gotten some kind of medication. Or they got a virus and they got some kind of medication for it, like the flu. And so we are concerned about that, and there is an environmental issue to diabetes, and we test all the patients that come into my office for heavy metals and pesticides and insecticides. So, if you're type 1 or type 2, you definitely want to see what is causing that pancreas to go into this state. So let's talk about the first type of diet, or fasting. So fasting is reducing calories and eating specific calories, and sometimes within a certain period of time. So there was a very large study done in New Zealand, and they put patients on 800-calorie-a-day diet. And they gave them an over-the-counter protein drink, and they gave them some light soups and things. And within 3 to 5 months, every one of those patients had totally reversed their diabetes type 1. Not put it in remission, but totally reversed it. So I wanted to work with some patients with diabetes, and we have some in our office, and we've been able to work with several that are type 1, and we've seen amazing results. So we changed it a little bit because camel milk, first of all, is high in insulin. There's 52 units of insulin per liter of that milk. So right away, we're getting a head start. The second thing is that camel milk is a complete food. So you're going to get every vitamin, mineral, fatty acid, nutrient, amino acid that you need in that milk. So you're getting your insulin and you get all your nutritional value in that milk. So what we did is we came up with a program where we made specific drinks with the milk, and we made some soups and stuff till we got our 800 calories up. And it's a pretty filling. It's not as restrictive as you would think once you get on it. And the patients that we've worked with have reversed their diabetes. They are no longer taking any medication at all. Now, that doesn't really mean that you're going to want to go and start spraying pesticides and using heavy chemicals or eating pizza and soft drinks every day. But you're going to need for the, probably the rest of your life to make sure that you're healthy. So you don't have any other problems. But we have seen amazing, amazing results with that. So if you've got type 1 or type 2 diabetes and you want to, know more about the study or you want to set up a consultation, just feel free to call my office, which is 919-561-1545. And, if you've got a child that, or you have had a vaccine or a child that's had a vaccine and developed type 1 diabetes, we've notified the CDC, the Center for Disease Control. We've notified the FDA, but they have done absolutely zero about it. So there is a definite correlation between vaccines and type 1 diabetes. So that's one thing I wanted to talk about. But the other thing is the new diet. It's not new, but there's a lot of talk going on the television and in magazines and about it. So I want to talk a little bit about how we've used it in our practice. And that is a circadian rhythm type diet or fasting. So what is a circadian rhythm? It's basically our body clock. So it regulates our physical, our mental, and our behavioral. And all living things, whether it's a plant, an animal, even a microorganism, they operate their body on circadian rhythms. And this master clock of our body is in our brain. And it's composed of over 20,000 nerve cells called neurons. So we want to look at what the circadian rhythm is responsible for. Well, first of all, it regulates the hormone melatonin. So if you don't sleep at night, this is a diet that is just made for you. And it also regulates other hormones. It regulates if you've got heart disease. It can lower that. It can lower your blood sugar levels and your blood pressure. So it's an amazing thing. It helps with all kinds of sleep, depression, and things of that nature. So what is this diet about? It's not about necessarily you cutting calories. So that's a great thing, because I can hear the groans through the phone. Oh, no, I'm only going to be able to eat a certain amount of calories. No, that's not it at all. So what happens when you're on this circadian rhythm fasting diet is that your brain starts to reset itself totally. So your body starts to burn off calories, and then every organ starts to cleanse itself and burn off calories. And so let's talk a little bit about it. Basically, this circadian rhythm diet is for you eating between the hours of 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., and then that's your cutoff. So you've got 16 hours during the night to fast. I do it every day, and I absolutely love it. I feel fantastic. And even my lab tests have come back amazing, and I feel just fantastic. So I want to talk a little bit about that today. I want to talk about how they have three major studies have been done: the Mayo Clinic, Harvard, and NIH, the National Institute of Health. And one of the major studies was done with Alzheimer's and dementia. So when you get that diagnosis, or a loved one in your family gets that diagnosis, it's devastating. But they found that when they put patients on this specific diet, and they combined it with more of a keto-type diet, which is more good fats in your diet, less processed food, that it basically stopped these Alzheimer's and dementia in its tracks. It did not progress any further in those patients. Now, this study's been going on for about 3 years. So far, those patients have not progressed any further into Alzheimer's or dementia. So that's a great thing. So then I started thinking, well, wait a second. In our world of medicine, we look at autism and Alzheimer's as being basically under that same umbrella, and that having those types, that spectrum. So I wanted to work with some children that were autistic, and I wanted to put them on this circadian rhythm fasting to see if it would improve. And so that's what I want to talk about today, a little bit about that study. So what we did is we worked with children that were homeschooled, and the reason being, for me specifically, is that the time of their food intake had to be timed from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., and most children in school don't get home till after 3, so that wasn't going to work, and some of them leave before 7 to go to school. So we worked with homeschool children, and the responses I received back and from the parents in my office is within 24 to 48 to 72 hours, these children had totally turned around, and parents couldn't believe it. So what we did is we obviously put them on the time frame of 7 to 3, and then we gave them sort of a modified keto diet. We gave them good fats, avocados, olive oil, and then we added in berries, blueberries, fresh fruit, and we added in a small amount of protein and green leafy vegetables. We took away carbs like grains, and we took away a lot of the nuts because these children really just don't do well on nuts, and we took away all of the beans except for green beans occasionally. So why did we do that? We'll talk about it when
let's find out when we come back from this break. Dr. Millie Hinkle's with us, CamelMilkUSA.com. Dr. Millie Hinkle's with us, and we're talking about a modified diet. A diet that, on the plus side, olive oil, blueberries, fresh fruit, green leafy vegetables. On the minus side, you take out the grains, nuts, and almost all beans. Please continue.
Right. So we're talking about the circadian rhythm fasting diet. So we know that our body works on a master clock, and the best hours for us to do this, to eat, are from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., leaving 16 hours to fast. So 3 studies were done by 3 different university or health organization type things, NIH, National Institute of Health, Harvard, and Mayo Clinic. One of those studies was done in Alzheimer's and dementia. And others were done in heart disease, diabetes, and blood pressure. Within a short 5 weeks, when you did this specific time frame, the blood pressure, the blood sugar, and the blood cholesterol dropped, and this is their words, drastically within that short amount of time. And the diets they were on were pretty much just what I spoke of. I think they were allowed to have, beans and nuts if they wanted them. For us, the reason we don't like to use, especially with autistic children, the beans and nuts is because, and grains specifically, nuts because they're mostly allergic to them. If they're not allergic to any nuts, then we allow it, obviously, but some of them can handle walnuts, some almonds, but very few. But 90-some% are allergic to all the grains and beans for some reason. Some of them do okay on green beans. So one of the problems is lectin, Lectin, and that is a protein in those plants that literally our body looks at and receives as a pesticide. So those lectins actually act as pesticides on our bodies. So we don't want the nervous system of these children and their guts to be any more disrupted than they already are. So with this circadian rhythm diet, I don't specifically care for straight keto, mainly because if you've got a kidney problem, you need to be careful. So we just recommend fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, and about 20 to 25% of your diet meat, and plenty of the good fats like avocados and olive oil. And these children excel. These Alzheimer's patients, the dementia patients excel with that, and the heart disease. And you're going to lose weight. And you can eat as much as you want in that period of time. Just eat all you want in that period of time. You don't have to worry about how many calories you're eating. So that's a great thing. So when we did this with these children, here's what we know. First of all, we talked about a lot of these children don't sleep at night, and their guts are all messed up. And when we do levels on the neurotransmitters in their body, which regulates a lot of our actions and motions and health, they're usually quite low. So what happens during this 16-hour fast? What happens is the body produces a growth hormone, and that hormone literally starts to heal the gut lining. And that's what these kids all have. They have what's called a leaky gut. So we're healing the gut lining, and it also helps heal skin layers. It gives you new layers of skin. So they're not going to be reacting to things that they come in contact with. And if you're on this diet, you're less likely to get the flu. And you're just so many other things. So when we fix that gut, we literally raise the neurotransmitter levels. Now, the neurotransmitter levels, it sounds like they're in your brain and it has to do with your pancake. It does affect children's actions, all these outbursts and things that autistic children do. That is usually, coming from problems with neurotransmitters and leaky guts and, the neurons misfiring in the brain. So we know that this intermittent fasting strengthens the neural collections in the brain, and that's why it's so good for memory, moods, and people start to think clear, and that's why it's so good for these Alzheimer's and dementia patients. And so what is produced, it actually strengthens those neurons in our brain, which are brain connections that are linked to the learning and the memory. So
I'll be right back.
It's amazing.
Dr. Millie Hinkle. Absolutely fascinating. Dr. Millie Hinkle's with us, and if you'd like to get in touch with her, let me give you a number. 919-561-1545. 919-561-1545. Website, camelmilkusa.com. Dr. Hinkle, I can tell you that I have tested what you said. And for weeks, I ate nothing but salads during the summer, green leafy salads with dark green leaves, purple leaves, olive oil, apple cider vinegar with mother, pink sea salt, ground pepper, tomatoes. And what I found out very quickly was my weight dropped to my ideal weight. I was more alert and had more energy and had much lower blood pressure. So what you're saying is absolutely true.
Oh, absolutely. And, people don't realize that just the world we live in, cell phones greatly affect our circadian rhythms. And so, even the electronic stuff we're around and all the pesticides, insecticides, we want to try to, heal our body and heal our gut and eat healthy and allow our body to get rid of those toxins. And what happens, it's only in about the last 4 hours when you eat this circadian rhythm diet from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., and then you go to bed that night. It's only about those last 4 hours of that diet near morning time that your body actually starts to burn up that excess fat and dump those toxins. So it is an amazing, I can't recommend it highly enough. And I found the funny thing for me was I actually thought, I'm going to be hungry, but you're not. So what we did is we added a little tweak to patients who said, I'm not sure that I can go from 3 o'clock until bedtime without something to eat. So what we did is we allowed a liquid of 50 calories or less. So just chicken broth warmed is very satisfying. So you want to keep it within a 12-hour period if you do that. And, if you don't want it to go over that 50, and it has to be a liquid. So the chicken broth worked great for those people, especially in the wintertime when it's cold and they want a little something warm. And that worked great, and everyone was happy. I personally don't even need that, but we certainly do not rule that out for patients who think that they're just not going to be able to make it. But they don't seem to ever be hungry. Once you're on this, once you start eating real food, as I call it, you simply don't seem to be as hungry, and you start to literally taste your food. I mean, just the taste of a tomato or berry or anything is so much more intense. You learn to really appreciate and love really good, healthy food. So I wanted to talk about those two today, and the Autistic Children Network own it. They're doing amazingly well, and if parents are interested in doing that and they want to talk about it, they're more than welcome to call and set up a consult at the office, and we can go over the exact details of it as well as other patients. I think patients with heart disease and blood pressure, it is amazing to think you can totally turn that around in 4 to 5 weeks. That is a big thing. And knowing that you're not going to be having to watch your calories. A lot of people say, I feel like I'm starving because I'm not getting enough food. Well, you can eat as much as you want within whatever these healthy foods are. So that's a great diet. And, probably we all want to wait till after Thanksgiving to do that, but I plan on doing it through Thanksgiving and still having a great Thanksgiving Day. So call if you have questions about that.
And I want to talk about Hinkle, very, very quickly.
Pardon?
You're talking about being hungry, and I was hungry. So what I did was I just ate more of the same.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay? That's all I did, and it fixed it. You can't eat lettuce and feel the same way as if you had a huge plate of pasta that would carry you for 6 hours. It's not like that. But when you do this, you will become, at least I have, become way more alert, way more energy, more drive to start, more energy to stick to it, more energy to fix it. I was more creative. The only problem is that, those tomatoes and lettuce plants that we were growing stopped growing because of the end of the growing season. So we have to find, equivalent high-quality produce. And that's it. That's it. The olive oil you can find.
Right. Well, this time of the year, there's great stuff like collards and kale and turnip greens and things that are really good. And here's an interesting fact. We see a lot of patients now that come into my office that have major problems complaining of acid reflux and gut issues. And we find it's 90% of the time it's Roundup or something called SIBO. And so what we know for a fact is that it's not raw things you need to eat. That actually can make it worse. The way to heal that is with actual green leafy vegetables that have been cooked. And we look at a lot of people that have been exposed to BT, which is a larvicide that they're using on crops. And the only way to get rid of that in food is to cook everything. So we see that. And I have a real problem with the camel's milk, and that now we want to start seeing the camel samples of it tested around the country to make sure that our camels are not getting elevated levels of Roundup and stuff in their milk, because around the world, in other countries, they're having quite high levels of pesticides and radiation in milk, camel's milk. And it's just not camels, it's in all animals, goats and cows and other milk sources. So we want to make sure, because we don't have at this time an organic dairy for camel milk in the United States, and we get such a demand for parents and cancer patients specifically wanting organic milk. So we want to try to get at least one dairy that's going to start producing organic milk here in the United States, because there is a concern, because the Roundup, the glyphosate in that Roundup is just destroying people's health. Even my dog has gotten very ill from it. And every autistic child that's been in my office this summer has shown up with that in them. In fact, every patient has. It's so prevalent, and we really need to stop the just use of that as if it's no problem, because it is a problem. And the formula has changed. They've mixed more stuff with it. And now they're wanting to put something called dicamba, and they have in some of the Roundup. And that is literally lethal, because that dicamba can totally destroy your health, cause seizures, all types of problems. And what happens is when it's sprayed on a crop, that's not it. Months later, even when the sun is shining on it, they say that the vapor from the sun can make that vapor drift as far as 2 miles away. So, I have a real concern about Roundup, and I am absolutely, totally rabid about trying to get something done about that. And I'm in a beautiful state, North Carolina, but when you go along the highways in the summer, you see the trees are jet black where they've sprayed. And, they're still using Agent Orange in the United States. My gosh, didn't we learn anything from Vietnam about that? We need to reduce our use of pesticides and go more organic. So if you're a farmer or you're someone who's got a garden, and in the summertime, or even now, because it wouldn't have gone away, you've developed acid reflux, and you feel like you've got all kinds of burning or stomach problems, or your balance, and we see a lot of older people whose balance, and young people whose balance is messed up, and you're worried, what is going wrong? If I got a brain tumor, what's going wrong? It's always Roundup when they come into my office, and some of them just need gallons of homeopathic remedies to get it out of them. And one of the important things is to eat the proper diet, and that actually is by cooking green leafy vegetables. That's a big part of that. Not that salads aren't great, but you want to try to heal that gut. And that's something that I have a real concern about, and want to look at trying to get a dairy in the United States that is organic. Now, we do not allow our dairies to give our camels any soy products, because most cows the milk or eat something soy in their diet, and soy can regulate thyroxine. It can disrupt thyroid levels and affect the hormone levels in animals and humans. And we know that camels have to have an elevated level of progesterone to not only be able to get pregnant, but also to continue to have that baby healthy. And camels have elevated levels of thyroxine, and that's why so many patients with thyroid problems do so great on camel milk. And if we're giving them soy, it reduces the thyroxine levels in those camels. And when I started this in 2009, we had about a 25% mortality rate in baby camels. And now we have dropped that down to less than 5%, which is amazing. So the deal with a camel is if the mother loses a baby, she doesn't have the milk. Whereas if a cow loses a baby, you continue to milk that cow, but a camel will not give milk unless the baby is actually nursing. So it can be a very expensive thing for someone to have to buy the camel and then something happen to that baby. So we're very, careful about what we do with our camels, and we don't give them GMO products. And but we still want to get some organic dairies out there, because now even grains, hay, wheat, are treated with Roundup before they're even planted. So, and we want to be careful what we're actually putting in our animals. And a physician friend of mine sent me an interesting article a few days ago And that article stated that scientists have tested cereals in the United States, and there is more Roundup in the cereal than there are vitamins and minerals. Can you believe that?
Absolutely, I can. Just to recap, the circadian rhythm diet. My understanding is on the plus side, fruits and vegetables. On the minus side, gluten. On the plus side, beneficial fats, and I guess that would be eggs, real butter, avocados, and then the window for the consumption of food would be 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., and that gives our body time to heal and sleep.
Exactly.
Is that in a nutshell? Okay.
That's pretty much it in a nutshell. You know, it leaves you a lot of room to be creative with your diet and you know, eat pretty much anything you want that's a real food, not say you know, a candy bar and cookies and cakes, but real food. If you want some sweet, eat fruit, you know, that type thing, instead of eating a piece of cake. But eat as much as you want. Eat all you want. Eat all day within that period. And I find that for myself, the big meal needs to be at lunch, and I usually eat a later lunch, and then I eat another snack right before the cutoff time so that I am happy until the next day, and I really do not miss it. But also, you need to drink lots of water, and drink and all the water you want after 3 o'clock. You can drink all the water you want. So don't feel that you're going to be restricted in that. In fact, you want to drink water, but you don't want to be drinking any other liquids like, you know, soft drinks or coffees or teas or alcohol in that period after 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You just want to drink really good water. So that's a study that we're seeing great results with Alzheimer's, heart disease patients, diabetics, and especially autistic children. You know, in any diet, anytime you're doing anything, you always need to check with your physician first before you attempt anything. And a lot of times, if it's not their idea, they're not interested in you doing it. So I don't know, but we will say that. And, you know, Vincent, we're looking at, you know, as I spoke about this last time, time before last, you know, we're still looking for doing some other studies with the camel milk. We're still wanting to do a really large opioid study because we saw such positive results with those patients, opioid addiction patients, that we put on the camel milk. It was amazing. And then we're also looking at doing a diet with men as a you know, looking for signs of prostate cancer, men that have been to the doctor and have elevated PSA levels. We want to work with those men because we have seen in other patients their levels come way, way, way down on the camel's milk in our office. So we want to do a larger study with that. And then the other study we want to look at, women are always, you know, the ones so much that are worrying about infertility. But we see a lot of men today that have low sperm counts or who have, so to speak, sluggish sperm that, you know, don't swim as quick, you know, rapidly. So we want to look at that because we know, and we've seen it in my office. We've worked with about 7 couples now who have gone through all these other things, and the doctors can't find anything wrong. And we put them on the camel milk, and they've all had healthy babies where they had been through all these tests before and nothing could be found. So we want to look at that. We want to look at, because we know for a fact in countries where it is a major part of the diet of these men in their 80s and 90s that drink camel milk every day are fathering children. So we know that it's obviously doing something. So we want to look at that in a fertility study. So I'm excited about that. And we want to also caution, which I did the time before last, if you are a consumer of camel's milk on a regular basis, make sure your doctor and your dentist know that, because the anesthesia will not work.
Outstanding information, Dr. Hinkle. I'm really looking forward to further broadcasts with you. Dr. Hinkle, thank you so much for sharing this information with us, class. 919-561-1545 is the number for Dr. Millie Hinkle. Everyone all set? Cocked, locked, hour number 2 of USA Prepares. With us for this hour, Glen Parnham, International Health. Website, ihsite.com. Welcome, Glenn.
Well, brother, it's good to hear your voice again.
It's great to hear your voice. You know, Glenn, I wanted to share a little story with you. And, you know, when we talk about health, we talk about what we can do about it. But there's something I want to share, because I know you're a news hound. You read the news voraciously, and you ferret out the truth. There's a story that I've been reporting on about Chinese drywall. And Chinese drywall was imported in the United States typically between the years of 2004 through 2009.
Yep.
And what happened was there was a shortage of sheetrock or drywall or wallboard, all synonyms, in the United States as a result of about 9 hurricanes. So with all the damage from the hurricanes, there was this massive rebuilding effort that went on in the United States, and there were shortages of lumber. During that time, we were building our house in Missouri, and the price of OSB, which is oriented strand board, wafer board, people use that for lots of construction projects, went from about $7 to $21, $22 in a very, very short time, which could cause, those kinds of price increases happened in all the products that you would use in construction. Dimensional lumber, drywall, everything you could think of. So what happened was the Chinese made drywall. They used, I believe, industrial waste, and that was sandwiched between 2 pieces of paper. So that was the wallboard. And the off-gassing of this industrial waste caused people to get really, really sick. And the sicknesses included respiratory problems, asthma attacks, chronic coughing, difficulty breathing, chronic headaches, sinus issues, nosebleeds. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And I just wanted to share that with you, that did happen. And yesterday, one of our USA Prepares instructors was on the air with me, and he happens to be an electrician by trade. He's studied it, he's practiced it, and he's done it for years. So he's a commercial electrician. And I asked him if he ever saw some of the telltale signs of the Chinese drywall or the off-gassing of the drywall, which is, let's say you have silver in your house. That could be silver jewelry, that could be silverware. Now, I'm not talking about stainless steel forks and knives and spoons. I'm talking about silverware, okay? Or tea kettles, antiques that would be of silver or silver plate, and they would tarnish very quickly. The copper wires inside the receptacle boxes or the switch boxes, the copper would turn black. The bare copper wires would turn black. Copper in the house would turn black. The silver would turn black, and people would have difficulty breathing. Well, Kyle Harris, our electrician instructor, said that he saw one house that had that. And in that particular house, what he saw was grounds that failed. So there were wiring problems inside the wall, inside the receptacles, inside the switches, at the connections of the receptacles and switches, as a result of this off-gassing of hydrogen sulfide. So I just wanted to share that with you. I didn't know if you had ever come across that, but we're going to expose this more and more and more on USA Prepares over the next few weeks. Have you heard of that?
Absolutely. That was during the time of a huge building boom going on out here in Arizona. Right. We've been based here in Arizona for 30 years. And absolutely, that when that started to happen, warnings were coming out from different scientists. But it's kind of like, the same old story. warnings have been talked about for years about the dangers of vaccines. Warnings have been talked about for years about cell phones and the cell phone radiation absolutely causing cancer. And it's like the government agencies, and I use that term very lightly, that are supposed to protect us, okay, basically are in the pocket of all this big money, whether it's the construction or China, and everything they're doing. And so it's very sad. Yeah, I was told about that many years ago, because it was even on the news out here for like maybe one day, where they said there seems to be some relationship between all the new home building and strange symptoms that people are getting. And they said, we'll follow up on this. And they never did. So it's like God is pulling back the curtain in the Wizard of Oz movie, okay? His word says everything hidden will be exposed. I call it the Wizard of Oz, okay, when the curtain gets pulled back and this little person who they thought was some big, wizard just turns out to be a little midget, all right? Well, that's what's happening right now, with several different areas, not just the vaccines, not just the cell phone towers, because I don't believe God is going to leave us defenseless against these satanic organizations, and I don't want to offend anybody with my Christian beliefs, but it's very clear, okay, like what happened with Monsanto, and, it's being exposed, and if your listeners, I'm going to, I will not only give them my personal number. I'm the research director for international health. I have been for 30 years, okay, and I'm a clinical studies researcher, advanced studies in the three primary areas: clinical nutrition, hormone biochemistry, and infectious diseases. So I offer free consultations to people, because what's breaking my heart, and it has been for years, but it's even worse now, I'm on the phone doing consultations 6 to 8 hours a day, and so many people are sick, and there's all these different reasons for it, but now, it's being exposed. Now, I'm curious, what got your man there interested in exposing this, 14 or 15 years after it happened?
Well, that would be me. I'm the guy who decided to expose it. And the reason is I get a chance to spend time with some of the brightest people on the planet, including you. Okay? I am so fortunate. I believe I am the most fortunate guy on the planet. I'm surrounded with literally the brightest people. And I get to ask a lot of questions. And as a result of my curiosity, I try to connect the dots. And I've been thinking, so what is it? Dr. Norman Shealy, Dr. Richard Allen Miller, Captain John Regan, Rich Scheben, Guineith Isaacs. Just to name a few people, other than you, Stephen Hewer. We've all come to the conclusion that we are surrounded, top, bottom, left, right, 360 degrees, by toxins, electromagnetics, radiation, poisons, everything you could possibly think of. And one of the things I was thinking of was fluoride. The fluoride problem was what was the industry going to do with fluoride? Well, instead of resolving or solving the problem, they decided to give it to everybody. So they tried burying it, and then the cows would die because they bury it on farms. Farmers were ignorant of the facts. They would dig these holes, get a backhoe, bury the fluoride. It would rain. The water would percolate up, and the cows would drink from puddles and die. So they decided, let's give it to everybody. In the former Soviet Union, there was a massive, massive radiation failure, Chernobyl. And downwind from Chernobyl were farms with grass, and the grass was valuable for raising beef. So what the former Soviet Union did, instead of putting a big fence around this land and calling it no man's land, for, let's say, a few thousand years until the half-life of the radiation that landed downwind on this grass was reduced through natural processes, they decided that they would build a computer system and use this computer system to tag the animals that were raised on this no man's land and make sure everybody got his and her fair share of the radioactive beef. Okay, so spread it around, kind of like what happened with fluoride. So then you can fast forward a little bit to what do we do with all the coal we are burning in the United States? So we have these coal-fired electric power generation plants, and on the input side you have this black coal. Along the railroad tracks, along Interstate 44, if you look to the side of the road, you will see railroad tracks for miles and miles and miles, and you'll see these rail cars filled with coal. It's like every other day, massive trains, hundreds of cars long with coal. So the next question is, okay, where's all that coal going? Well, they're burning it. And okay, when we burn the coal, what happens to all that coal? Well, there's coal ash, and it's typically a whitish, grayish color. Well, some person had the bright idea, you know what we can do? We can mix that with a little bit of water. We can make a slurry out of it, and instead of excavating for gypsum, which is the main ingredient in sheetrock or wallboard, we'll use this fly ash that's a waste product. We'll package it in boards and we'll sell it to the unsuspecting consumer. Now, the fly ash has concentrations of radiation. So you take the radiation in coal, it does not disappear when the coal is burned. So what you have is a big lump of coal into let's say, a thimbleful or a portion of a thimbleful of fly ash. Now you've concentrated all that radiation, that big lump of coal, into the fly ash and mix it with water, put it in between two pieces of paper, and now you have sheetrock. Radioactive waste, toxic sheetrock. Glen Parnham's with us, and let me give you his number, class, 480-429-0021. 480-429-0021. If you'd like to chat with Glen about your particular issues. And so, Glen, here's my concern. You take a large amount of coal and you burn it, and what's left is this small amount of ash. And the concentration of the thorium and the uranium that's left in naturally occurring coal is now concentrated like 10x, up to 10x, maybe even more than 10x. And when you put this in your sheetrock, and you put the sheetrock in your house, now you are in an envelope of radiation.
Of course.
Really serious, let alone some of the other industrial wastes that come from China that they put in their sheetrock. Now, how do you know about this? Well, it's kind of hard. You'll have to have some air samples and take some core samples of the sheetrock. But what made this even worse is many of the U.S. manufacturers of sheetrock have used ingredients in their sheetrock that are questionable, that are toxic. And there was a stockpile of Chinese sheetrock. So we found the problem. We said, oh, this Chinese sheetrock is deadly. Shouldn't be using it in your homes. So it stayed in warehouses, but it had some value. So what the owners, through their individual greed, did, the owners of the sheetrock said, let's mix this in with other sheetrock. So we'll have some American sheetrock, let's say 9 parts of American sheetrock, 1 part of Chinese toxic sheetrock, and nobody will know. And we won't lose all the money that we spent buying this cheap, junky, toxic Chinese wallboard or sheetrock. So I think that's what happened. It's all over. There's at least 100,000 houses that have been constructed with this toxic sheetrock. So that's a thumbnail sketch of my thoughts on the toxicity.
And, as all these things are uncovered, okay, and the sheetrock, if people are having strange symptoms, who would think to check the sheetrock? let's give your listeners some hope, because one thing that I find myself, even as a research scientist, getting overwhelmed as all these things are being exposed, okay, and as people's lives are being destroyed with health challenges. Because look at the trillions of dollars being made by the biggest satanic cartel on planet Earth called Big Pharma, okay? So that and the major food corporations that have now been caught, okay, because, and if people will call me at my research office, okay, and again, that's in Arizona, so we're on Mountain Time now, okay, 480-429-0021. I will email them as much information as they can handle. So one, let's look at what happened with this, okay, as bad as the sheetrock is, let's look at what just happened with Monsanto, okay, being proven in the first major court case in the United States, and there's thousands of them worldwide, but the man, 46-year-old man dying of cancer in California, he was a groundskeeper, okay, at a high school, spraying Roundup Ready. All right, well, during the discovery phase of his trial, his lawyers made Monsanto produce the paperwork that they have known since 1981. That's 37 years, brother, that exposure to parts per billion of the chemical glyphosate, which is Roundup Ready, causes not only cancer, okay, but 14 other major diseases. So, and Monsanto got fined $255 million. Total payout was $290 million. But now we know, because I've been asking for years on all these radio shows that I do, why all the childhood cancer? Why this epidemic of these diseases? Well, now we know. Every breakfast cereal that was tested was loaded with glyphosate. Now, I don't know about in your area, and in our area out here, we have a big children's cancer hospital, and they just parade out the bald-headed children whose parents were stupid enough to let them go chemotherapy, and they just keep sending us money. Nobody was ever talking about, well, what's causing all this cancer? Now we know. Okay, a week after the Monsanto decision, a major lawsuit was filed against General Mills. Every breakfast cereal is loaded with cancer-causing chemicals.
Glen Parnham's with us, and calling in from Baltimore, Maryland, Tom. Welcome, Tom.
Hi, Mr. Finelli. I just happened to slip by your station today. Normally, my schedule doesn't allow me to listen to you live. A number of years ago, I used to listen to you live because of my schedule being different, and I called in from time to time. We had some great conversations. I always learn a lot. I know everyone does who listens to you. And I just wanted to call in since I slipped by today and caught you live at this time of year. I thought, let me give Mr. Finelli a call, tell him how much his show is appreciated, and wish him happy Thanksgiving to you and your family there on the farm. Also, if you could let Erin Dakins know that a lot of listeners miss her show, and I know a lot of folks, including me, wish her and her family and her kids a happy Thanksgiving as well.
I will certainly do that. I miss Erin Dakins as well. She and I used to, we used to be on the air together. I was on her broadcast, and she was on ours. And then we did one together that we called the Bunker Files on Truth Frequency Radio.
I listened to them all. Yes, yes. Now,
Tom, how can we help you?
I'm not going to hold you up because Mr. Parnham is such an excellent guest. I did want to extend those wishes to you and to Mr. Parnham as well.
Thank you, brother.
One thing that caught my attention that you said, I want to make a quick comment on that and then ask a question. I'm going to hang up and let other folks call and let you guys get on with your great conversation. You mentioned the black wires with the electricity, the copper turning black. It brought to mind something I think you and your electrician friend and Mr. Parnham will appreciate. About a decade ago, I was building a house. Actually, I rehabbed the house from top to bottom, literally rebuilding it from top to bottom, and literally underground. I had to redo all the pipes coming from the street. It would have been easier just to build a new house, by the way, if anyone's thinking about making that mistake that I did. But at any rate, I'm a retired police officer, and I did not have the kind of skills I needed to do what I just described to you. But I wanted to learn, so I kind of acted as a general contractor, and I would hire experts and let them know part of the job was to allow me to look over their shoulder and for them to teach me. Now, some people don't like that, and that's fine. But I was lucky enough to find some really great people, and I really learned a lot. Getting to the point, though, my electrician was excellent. I learned so much from him. And if you're going to fool with electricity, you really do need an expert to teach you. Even today, I would not, even with his excellent tutoring, I would not attempt to do anything major with electricity unless I had an expert there. You really need to know your stuff. But he told me a story while he was teaching me. He said, you know what, I got to tell you about this. He said, look what I'm doing with these wires. He said, this electrical box is a mess. You want to have all these things labeled. That's important. You know, again, he stressed you don't want to mess with sloppy wiring. He said, but I do want to tell you something. He said, you know, I was hired as basically an electrical engineer for a large theater in Owensville, Maryland, and I went in there and I was taking a job over from the former electrical engineer, basically to oversee any problems, to be on call and whatnot. And he said, I could not believe what I saw when I did my initial survey of the building and its current condition with the electricity. He said it was only 3 years old, and I could not believe my eyes when I noticed that every single wire everywhere in the building was black, black, black. He said it was like a jigsaw puzzle. It was unbelievable. And it was not because what you described. He said what made him so incensed and so angry about the former electrical engineer who did the original wiring, by the way, was to secure his ability to have to be depended upon to come back and for them not to hire someone else. He spray painted all of his work with a type of spray paint. He said it wasn't even regular spray paint. It was something that you really had to almost cut the wire to even scrape it off. But that's the kind of diabolical people we have in this world. And I thought you'd appreciate that story talking about black wires.
I do, and I have a suggestion for you.
Yes, sir.
There is a book that I bought for friends who have been interested in wiring, and I have a copy here at the house. It's been used so much that the pages are falling loose from the binding. It's a electricity book that will teach you how to wire your home, from the circuit panels to the Romex to the BX, to metallic, non-metallic sheathing, to the gauge of wire, to the capacity of wire, to the types of switches, three-way switches, four-way switches, every possible circuit combination you can think of, with wonderful pictures. I mean, this is a first-quality book. It's you can get it for about $20 on the Internet, and it's Black & Decker's electricity book or home wiring book. I don't know the exact title. I don't have it right at my hand at the microphone this moment, but if you look up Black & Decker.
That's fine. I'm a good researcher, and what you just told me, I will find it. Thank you very much for that information. A little bit of information can take you a long way, and I'm a good hound dog with that. So thank you, sir.
With that book, you will be able to do all of the wiring that you need to do, every bit of it. And how do I know? Because I use that book as my go-to source when I wired our farmhouse with thousands of feet of wire. And we have not had a single electrical failure of any kind as a result of wiring it properly. And as you look at this, and if you look at other electrical circuit panels, whether they be fuses or circuit breakers, you will find over time more mistakes have been made than you can believe with how other people have wired their homes and businesses.
I can substantiate that point right here and now by telling you when that electrician was helping me redo this house, he pointed out so many issues. He said, these things are horrible. He said, but I can't get out. And that's when he told me the story about the spray paint. He said, I'll tell you the worst of the worst. He said, this is bad. He said, it's even dangerous. He said, but the worst of the worst is, and then he told me that story. So, yes,
well,
you're absolutely...
I appreciate your call. I just have one quick question for you.
Yes, sir.
Since you listen to USA Prepares, you've probably heard me a number of times talking about the police, actually,
yes,
about
sir,
law enforcement. How do you react as a retired police officer with the things I've said? Am I accurate, inaccurate? Have I lost my mind, or am I right on the money?
Well, last week I met with my CPA, and the topic of policing came up because, you know, he talks about what he's familiar with and knows what I did. And so we talk about each other's line of work and the state of affairs of the nation and whatnot. And the topic of police misconduct came up. And I'll tell you what I told him, and that is that I simply do not understand the things that you see in the news these days with what these police officers are doing. It's surprising to me as former background investigator. My one detective position that I held for about 5 years was that of a background investigator. I would investigate new applicants. I would travel across the nation if I had to get to their childhood homes and interview people. And that's important stuff to do, and you really need good detectives to do that. And if that's not happening, that's a major problem. I suspect it may not be happening today because you never hear anything about who hired this person, not who was in charge of the department, but who investigated. We were very careful because we did not want someone screwing up on the job, because back in the 80s and 90s when I was working, they would come straight to you and say, what did you do bringing this person into our profession? And you basically were responsible to a very large extent. So we were very careful about that. There's also something different about what I see in the character. I could talk to you ad nauseum about my concerns over the shootings, my concerns over the corruption. There's always been corruption, but it seems to be rampant. And I have no problem with what you say that is critical of the police. There's nobody in this world who hates bad cops as much as good cops. And I'm not trying to be pious. I'm no angel, but I certainly, on the job and in my personal life, try not to be a menace to society, try to do good to my fellow man, treat people the way I would want to be treated. And, that's my definition of being a good cop. And that's really all it takes. The callousness, the wanton lack of ability and seeming reckless endangerment that they carry on with every day with many of these officers is staggering to me. It's almost to the point, and I told this to my accountant, I said, I used to be proud of what I did, and now, I try not to talk about it too much with strangers because, there's so many bad cops, and people will say, few rotten apples, there's only a few rotten apples, but they often forget the end of that saying. A few rotten apples, what do? They spoil the bunch. And these rotten apples, there's more of them these days, I think, than in years past, and they have spoiled the bunch, and they've spoiled the reputation of my profession.
Let me ask Glenn. Glenn, do you have any questions for Tom, retired police officer? Did we lose Glenn? Maybe we lost Glenn.
Now, I've just ruined my profession. Even more people are going to hate me for losing Mr. Parnham. I apologize for that if I cause any interference.
Well, I'm sure he'll call back. But I've got a request of you, Tom, in Baltimore. Would you consider coming on the air as an instructor and teaching a class about what has happened in the policing, how peace officers have been morphed into law enforcement? People who used to say, geez, I'm sorry you got locked out of your car. Let me help you get back into your car. I'm sorry your keys are, locked in your car. Or, gee, can I help you change that tire? Or let me look under the hood because maybe I can help you get that car started. I'm talking about the 50s, 60s, and 70s. That's gone. It doesn't happen anymore.
You're absolutely right. We had to break the SOP, the General Orders of our department here in Baltimore, those of us who were willing to help people get locked keys out of the car, because around 1990, Baltimore City said, no more, unless there's a child or an animal in the car, you will not help motorists. My opinion, and many of my colleagues felt like this: if we can write you a ticket, and by the way, most of us, we didn't like writing tickets, we didn't write many of them, but if we can write you a ticket, we can certainly help you, and we will help you.
I'm going to give you Glen Parnham's number so that if you'd like to call him for a consultation, he can make that happen. That's 480-429-0021, 480-429-0021. His website, the letters I, the letter H, site, SITE.com. And Tom in Baltimore, I wanted to ask you to leave with our engineer your phone number so I can call you and get you on the air. One other quick comment. Glenn, you mentioned Agent Orange. Well, from what I've read, the Oklahoma City bombing was in 1995, was designed to destroy 400,000 Agent Orange files and Bill and Hillary Clinton CIA drug files. So we can talk about that another time, but I did want to make that comment. But my question for Glenn is there something, Glenn, in your opinion, that has happened to police officers that Tom in Baltimore has seen firsthand evidence of that has caused the police officers to become aggressive? Is there something medically that you can point to?
Of course.
What would that be, Glenn?
And I want to reiterate to your listeners, I don't care what disease you've been told that you have by these doctors, as well-meaning as they might be. They work for a gigantic satanic cartel called Big Pharma, okay? And it's part of the depopulation agenda to get you on medication. So what is happening to these cops? Okay, we're having that problem here. We've had more officer-involved shootings here in Phoenix. Couple of things. Most of them, it's been found, are taking bodybuilding drugs. What do you call them?
Steroids.
Steroids. Thank you. Okay, which make them aggressive. Okay, even calm police officers. Okay, but they get put into such a perilous situation, and then they are surrounded with electromagnetic frequencies, the radios and the cameras that are on them. Okay, it tears apart the DNA of the brain. And this has all been proven. Okay, our NIH, the National Institutes of Health, finally finished their 10-year study that it was done over in Europe years ago. Absolute provable evidence that exposure to cell phone radiation causes cancer. End of discussion. Period. Okay, so these cops are in their cars and they're surrounded with all this electronic equipment. Absolute power corrupts. So if they have a problem with anger, because they're hiring a lot of military people who are coming back with borderline PTSD. I know, a lot of law enforcement people who confide in me, all right, because I've been helping them with so many health challenges that they're having, that a lot of the guys who are on the force should not have ever been put on the force with their brain challenges, their anger problems, and then when they get in a situation where somebody maybe challenges them, then they just go, off the deep end. So, and then their diet, most people's diets are terrible, and they wonder why they're getting sick and are ornery all the time and aren't sleeping well. And if you're not sleeping well, and if you have Wi-Fi in your house, if you don't turn that off at night, you'll never sleep. That's part of the plan. And it's very hard for prideful Americans because, when I was traveling with my ministry years ago called Biblical Health, and I would travel to show the people irrefutable evidence, which is now coming out. The only thing, if you went to a public school, a government-controlled public propaganda school, the only thing you learned that was true was 2 + 2 does equal 4. And everything else was an absolute lie. And the deep state has controlled this country for well over 100 years. We haven't had a constitutional republic. for over 100 years, and they're now getting ready to crash the economy and bring about, their one world satanic government, but they want everybody sick first, and that's what they're doing. We have remedies. God is not going to leave us defenseless against these satanic organizations that want you sick, tired, fat, depressed, get diabetes, get cancer, and suck on the pharmaceutical drugs. I'll give you one key example. A new study came out, the first one in history. A nano-silver product killed cancer, and this was a human study published. Okay, so anyway, please call me, and I will spend time. I don't charge for my consultations, and we'll get you well, especially with what's coming, brother. It's going to get uglier and uglier with what's breaking out in this country.
No disagreement. No disagreement.
Always a pleasure, Vincent.
Hey, Glenn, thank you so much for being with us.